I think there's an illness that plagues a lot of us when it comes to our own thoughts about ourselves, and I guess our conduct towards our life in general. I think that, in a lot of ways, we have to recognize that at times we are both patient and physician to our own lives. Um, and sometimes we supply ourselves with the very poison that makes us sick. And, what I'm realizing most of all is we're not going to get any healthier. Like, how are you going to heal by telling yourself you're sick, or by feeling like you're sick? And that's not to say don't acknowledge, the parts of yourself that are seeking out change given a certain circumstance, or acknowledge the ill parts of you. But to say that we sort of have to recognize that our constant degradation of the self can't take place at the same time as it's building. I think analysis and creation don't happen at the same time. And if we're trying to create something new, trying to create a new identity or trying to create a new experience for ourselves, it's about not tethering it to certain ideas, not tethering it to the past, not tethering it to who you were, but allowing it to be sort of inherent to who you are. And I think when it comes to our healing, we have a troubling way of thinking that we have to truly give into our ailments at times. Like, I can note in my past a couple of times where, I was feeling sad and I did the actions that aligned with sadness. You do the actions that align with anger. You perpetuate them into the world through your action and through your inability to recognize that you don't have to act off of everything that you feel. And I think sometimes we feel sick in regards to certain parts of ourselves, and we allow that to be the whole of our being. And we tell ourselves, just because of this one instance, just because of this one example of me doing this, I'm sick and I need to be healed and I need this and I need that, without recognizing that our healing isn't necessarily inherent to someone just coming over you or giving you some type of medicine, but you giving yourself a perspective that allows you to actually act in accordance to difference, that allows you to act in a new way, I feel. And I've been doing a lot of reflecting on my whole entire spiritual journey as an individual, journey of self-discovery. And the note I'm realizing most of all is a reluctance to acknowledge when the world gives you the proper medicine or when you give it to yourself. I think a lot of us take away our answers and questioning them and not believing in their potency or not even allowing it to have a chance to be tested. And I think in doing that, we're constantly establishing to ourselves that our remedy is further than we can reach. And we're constantly going to be in this rut of sickness without any healing. And I think the reason we feel that way is because the inner part of us understands that healing doesn't come from anything in the external world. It's not going to just give it to you. It's about what you give to yourself. It's about the care that you drive to yourself, the actions that are actually befitting of the care. And I don't necessarily think it's just the actions themselves, but the feelings that they inspire and the feelings they are driven by, our self-love and our self-care. And I think when it comes to my self-care and my understanding of who I am, I think one of the greatest things I ever did for myself was commit to taking care of who I was, mind, body, and soul. And if we're talking about just our expression, I think it's important to recognize that your expression gets easier when you take care of the person expressing it, which is why I'm thankful that Teach Hanley is sponsoring this video today. If you guys are unfamiliar with Teach Hanley, is they're an uncomplicated skincare brand for men. And they sent me over a couple of things from their level 1 system: the wash, the scrub, and then the AM and PM moisturizers. I've been using these products for about, it feels like a year now. And I think when we get on the subject of skincare or the subject of just taking care of ourselves, the overall importance is to invest. Recognize that, your sickness may look a certain way in a certain day. You may feel a certain way a certain day, but it's important to not let one day paint the rest. And it's important to invest what you can and do what you can with what you have where you are. And sometimes healing takes some time, and sometimes it doesn't. But I think overall it's about your willingness to allow yourself to be healed and your allowance of yourself to not constantly focus on the negative parts of yourselves that you're trying to quote unquote escape from. I think what we run from has already caught us, and if we're running from ourselves, then we'll never escape. And since Tease Hanley is a sponsor for this video, they're offering you guys an amazing deal. You can save up to 40% off of your first box today, which is all the items I showed you, and you can get a gift valued at $20. I would recommend the exfoliating brush. I use it every single day almost, just to apply some of the wash and just to really get it going. And you can sign up today using the link in my description to get a 20% off for life. All of this is really just to say that we need to learn how to take care of ourselves outside of reference, to not solely do it because we're sick, to not solely do it because, we think something's wrong, but to care for ourselves because we deserve to be cared for, support ourselves because we deserve to be supported. It's not, in a sense, to say that you can't go out here in the world and do what you want and do what you truly care for. It's to say that when you are doing the things you truly care for and doing the things you truly want, it's about not stopping that flow of affirmation, the flow of attention that you may give to yourself. I think that I'm not saying that to say you have to be like narcissistic or constantly focused on who you are in an identity sense and like saying, oh, I'm this way, and let the world show it. But in a sense to say the path can't be walked without you in a lot of ways. And, I'm recognizing that when we sort of focus on our outcomes so much so that we forget to walk the path, then life's enjoyment becomes found in outcomes rather than, you actually being where you are. I think a lot of us have a certain relative distance towards our goals. And I think sometimes we have a relative distance to our healing. But I think the only distance that really is experienced is mental. Everything exists in the present moment to an extent. And I think that we need to sort of acknowledge that this present can have exactly what we wish to have. And it's just about our insistence and our commitment to ourselves to allow that to be here. I think sometimes healing is being present enough to choose your medicine, being present enough to read the label, being present enough to see the ways in which the world acts, to see the way at which certain actions and certain events have undone your character or how you've allowed them to undo your character, and making sure you're choosing things that actually work in your benefit. And I think the main thing that we need to choose in order to work in our benefit is a mentality or a perspective that actually accommodates us into the world we inhabit. I think that when we don't give ourselves the actual opportunity to be where we are, then a lot of times we lose so much more than we could ever gain. I think that, one of the biggest gains in life is your own perspective. And I think a lot of us are awake, but we're still asleep at the same time, if that makes sense. I think that, at times we get so caught up in, the events of life, the circumstances of life, the feelings about these circumstances, without any regard to the person feeling the circumstances, so without any regard or any filter or any choice in what we allow to impact us and what we allow to become part of our character and part of how we express ourselves as a people. I think the importance is to sort of grant yourself a real opportunity. I think, our overzealous thought, most of all, is taking away from our ability to be where we are and to be able to experience the art of expression, to be able to, do the things that we wish to do and do the things that make us feel most like ourselves without constantly referencing it to some outcome or some end. I think we need to learn how to do things to do them now and learn to derive some type of appreciation from the present moment by investing gratitude in our overall experience. Being able to wake up, being able to just be you. I think all we're ever doing is sharing, and I'll keep saying this until it doesn't want to be said anymore. But all we're ever doing is sharing. And I think the objective isn't to choose what you share so intently and be super focused, but to share with love regardless of what you are sharing. I think projection is not only in, the way you see the world, but the words you use. And I think sometimes when we connote the world or connote ourselves in certain negative ways and live in that negativity, for example, calling ourselves sick, we enforce a narrative and a mentality that makes us think we are. If you keep telling yourself all you do is fail, when you try to succeed, you're going to see more opportunities of failure and you're more likely to fall in that rabbit hole. You're more likely to fall into a thought or a stream of thoughts that leads you to your end. And I think it's important to give ourselves some type of positivity so we can walk on the path of our own liberation. I think our liberation or our freedom is only as free as we make ourselves, because it's not about what you are contained in, but what you contain within yourself. It's always what pulls you along. It's always what makes you fear, what makes you worry. And I think the objective isn't to not have fear or worry, but to be present enough to recognize when we're letting those thoughts enter our subconscious mind, when we're allowing them to enter our conscious, our consumption. I think a lot of life is about what you consume and what you give, and I think that's pretty much all of it. I think we should learn how to identify more with our choices than our thoughts, because our thoughts are sort of a collective. I think thinking is a collective. I think that we sort of tune into certain thoughts at certain times depending on how we feel. And I think it's about choosing how you feel to an extent. Not in a sense to say we aren't governed by experiences, but to say that we don't have to be. To say it's about how you react. And I'm not saying you have to be happy about everything, but you at least have to be happy about being you. Because there is no condition for doing that. There is no condition for loving yourself. And if there is, then you should ask yourself why there is such a condition and why it has justification for you not giving yourself what you deserve. I think a lot of our expectations from the world is really us just grasping at straws without recognizing that as soon as we stop grasping, we would have exactly what we would desire. I think part of manifestation and part of being present is not feeling like you need anything else to be complete, because you recognize that you already are enough as you are, and you always will be. The only thing that you ever carry is yourself. We can talk about all this material, we can talk about all our gains, all our accolades, all our achievements, but all they really do is add on to the person that you are. They add on to your feeling about your character, your feeling about the world, and your feeling about the love that you have for it. So overall, I think it's about recognizing our healing starts as soon as we start telling ourselves we are healing. As soon as we are committing ourselves to that healing, committing ourselves to focusing and looking at ourselves with an unanalytical eye and truly giving ourselves an opportunity to be where we are. And I think how you give yourself that opportunity, because I'm not just going to keep saying it, how you give yourself that opportunity to be where you are, to me, is just taking a step forward from your mind, recognizing that you don't have to think through every single circumstance and event in your life. You don't have to think through your quiet moments, and you're allowed to enjoy those quiet moments. You're allowed to enjoy life. You're allowed to have fun. You don't have to take everything seriously. You shouldn't make life personal, but you should make it intimate. Learning where to invest your affection and positivity is a very important thing, and I think it's helped me tremendously. Just being able to sort of, in a way, give myself an opportunity to choose what I allow to make me happy. And sometimes it's just about laughing at your own humor. And what that means is not only in a comedic sense, laughing at your own humor, but learning to appreciate the things you appreciate just because you appreciate them, and not allowing that appreciation to be referenced to anyone else's gratitude or appreciation towards anything else, and not even allowing your gratitudes to live in reference to each other. I think your healing is truly done once you stop instantiating to yourself what a healed person or healed identity looks like, and begin to do things that actually make you feel like you're leading towards your best good. Doing your best with what you can and what you have. And sometimes healing takes time. Sometimes change takes time. And sometimes it doesn't. But overall, it's just about your ability to be present enough to make those choices that lead to that healing. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope you're taking care of yourself and doing what you can, what you have, to the best extent. There's a lot on the way, a lot already here, and I thank you all for watching. Oh,